From Bitcoin, blockchain or distributed ledger technology to cryptocurrencies, tokens and initial coin offerings, it seems everyone involved has something to say, but can you really trust their advice? One man's had enough of weasel words and charlatans and is ready to give you impartial, independent analysis. With digestible blockchain bites, ICO analysis and need-to-know news on cryptocurrencies, author, speaker, transparency and clarity advocate and award-winning software innovator Barry James brings you Radio ICO.
Hello, and today I'm delighted to be with Nick Cowan, who is the Managing Director of the Gibraltar Stock Exchange and shortly the Gibraltar Blockchain Exchange, which we're going to talk about. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Barry. It's great to be here.
Okay, so you've been working on what is, I believe, a project and what comes out of that, which has worldwide significance for some time, haven't you? Could you tell us about that? How long have you been working on it?
Yes, sure. The main exchange, we've been open for the best part of just about 3 years now. And when we came into 17, we've been in the fixed income and funds business. We had to make a decision about going into the equities business. And that meant getting a equities trading technology solution, looking at your traditional clearing and settlement processes. And what we have seen parallel to our thought process, I apologize about the background noise. I'm in Lisbon at a huge conference, but we had our government of Gibraltar a couple of years ago started to look at whether we could provide, as a jurisdiction, a regulatory framework for blockchain operators in financial services or the distributed ledger technology. And those regulations were released in terms of framework in May this year. And they'll come into force legally January the 1st, 2018. So we saw really a few things. One, a decision for us that we had to make about where to go next. Two, the framework that was announced by our government. And thirdly, the explosion in this entire new digital crowdfunding space called the initial token sale market. And we just thought that the opportunity as a new exchange is that perhaps we could try, without too many legacy systems, to actually do something relatively innovative, but also I think much needed. And if you look at the space and the growth in what is popularly known as initial coin offerings, we had an opportunity really as an exchange to say, look, we're a national stock exchange. That's absolutely fantastic. Perhaps what we could do is actually approach our regulator and look at becoming licensed as a national cryptocurrency exchange and also as a token sale platform. And just to go into a little bit more about the detail of that and the process behind it. So in answer to your question, we've actually sort of been thinking about this for the best part of 2017, but actually looking at the evolution and the speed at which we've started to move really from the second half this year, where we sold 25% of our company to a strong Asian Fintech company. That allowed us to say, okay, in this entirely unregulated space, with regulators really concerned about perhaps a lack of governance, investors possibly not really understanding what they bought, we thought, well, we could show some leadership here and provide a similar model to your traditional exchanges where an issuer of an ICO can come and appoint a sponsor. The sponsor can then put that ICO issuer or token sale issuer through what we call the ICO bootcamp, and effectively make sure that you are really ready to launch. And that includes, the correct risks are disclosed, the technology has been audited, the controllers are fit and proper, and a lot of the things which the regulations coming in January talk about, which are the 9 principles. So what's been interesting, Barry, is the response to our proposal, and that is that globally we've seen jurisdictions, issuers, operators in the space say this is really exciting and a bit of a game changer, because you're really taking the lead here, A, as a jurisdiction, by being one of the first in the world to have regulations, and B, as an exchange to potentially be one of the first to actually provide a licensed regulated framework for ICO issuers to have that institutional grade of kite mark that you would receive by going through our token sale process.
Absolutely, very, very interesting, and I know that you have worked closely with your regulator and given a lot of thought to the regime, and then isn't that to some extent reflective of the unique place that you as Gibraltar find yourself in?
Yes, I think it is. I think one of the advantages of being a smaller jurisdiction is that the accessibility and partnership that you can operate under, I think is a huge advantage. And the relationship we have with our regulator, I would like to consider as being extremely strong. They obviously are a regulator, and like anybody else, we will have to go through a licensing process, which we are optimistic about.
Yeah.
And apply for the license to actually do what we want to do. But we are in a strong partnership with them. We work closely under our existing business, the actual main market on GSX in terms of prospectus approval. And we are optimistic that that will allow us to, we hope to move extremely quickly and get this business up and running in Q1 18.
Yeah, absolutely. And the scope of this is pretty wide. It's a whole ecosystem, including a token exchange, but also elements like a centre of development and excellence. Would you sort of talk a bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the first challenges that any fintech has, or SME, is really just trying to find a jurisdiction where you can get the basic services that you require. And Gibraltar has made a lot of progress there, particularly with our banks in Gibraltar, who have moved towards being a lot more open than other jurisdictions about helping fintechs get bank accounts open. But I think what we felt was that actually we could really develop under the GSX group parent, a whole suite of services, which again would have to be independently licensed, independently regulated, and obviously segregated for operational compliance purposes. But yes, we want to be able to take a startup really from the initial token sale right through to the IPO. And if we can help that fintech or SME or any corporate really, get access to, payment services, asset management, corporate services, fund administration. We're actually just in the process of actually acquiring a company in Gibraltar that's a leading fund administration and fiduciary business. And that again allows us to be able to say to a fintech, look, you can come to us and we'll help you with your capital raising requirements via the token process, but we can also help you open a company. We can help you get your accounts done. We can help if you're a fund, help you administer your fund, and other services which we hope to add on through 18. And again, we'll work with our regulator to hopefully convince them that we are fit and proper and eligible to go into those other businesses. But yeah, we're very excited about that opportunity. And again, the response from people we're talking to is that this is much welcome, because you can be operating a successful business, and then the next day the bank that you're with decides that actually they don't like this space and they shut you down. And that can be incredibly punitive to a business that's in this space and is accepting payments and making payments to clients.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're unable to do that. And again, we want to be able to say to companies, look, we know you've passed our AML and KYC tests, and therefore we're committed to providing you with the full range of services. And the hope is that if we look after clients, they will stick to Gibraltar, and that I think is a great thing to offer.
So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. As I say, I'm also interested in the in the the development side of this, and the development center, I think it's called. You talked about. I guess
Yes,
you're
yeah,
drawing on talent from far and wide as well.
yes. So part of our initiative as well is to launch something called the Blockchain Innovation Center, and what we really want to do is to try to do a couple of things. One, position Gibraltar as really a leading fintech jurisdiction, where if we can help in our own little way provide space and potentially resources to help fintechs come to Gibraltar and get access to development, also for fintechs and technology companies to be able to submit proposals to our BIC. But thirdly as well, and this is really important, to be able to try to, as best as we can, bring in, globally the best practices, standards, codes of conduct, regs, particularly as jurisdictions develop, where we can also work with, government and our regulator in hopefully partnering up on policy. And again, we think that's really important because part of the model, Barry, of GSX and GBX, and I'll talk about GSX in a minute, but part of the model of GBX is we want to make sure that our let's just call them listing rules for tokens, and also sponsor rules for the members of GBX that will bring token offerings to market. We want to make sure that we are, current and absolutely right up there in terms of institutional grade. So we're also forming, as well as the Blockchain Innovation Center, forming something called the GBX Alliance, and that's we're really excited about that. And we've had several companies say, look, we really want to be part of the alliance to help you guys develop your rules, but also make sure that the rules adapt as the technology adapts. So we think, again, it's been very interesting that globally there's been just a lot of interest and support in this, as we call it, a sort of crypto harbor, safe harbor approach that people can look to. So
just for anyone who's listening who didn't get it yet, GSX is the Gibraltar Stock Exchange, and GBX is the Gibraltar Blockchain Exchange.
Yes.
And the alliance, Nick, how might individuals or organizations apply to join that?
Yeah, just get in touch. Absolutely. I mean, if you're operating this space and you're interested to know more and you think you can help, then just, it's nick.cowan@gsx.gi. And no, we're absolutely looking for those types of organizations to help us. And I think, look, part of our development is not just developing the ecosystem. It's also GBX will focus on utility tokens. And what we've learned about this space is that startups will look to raise capital to develop perhaps their technology or their blockchain.
Yeah.
And token sales offer that opportunity, but you have to demonstrate that you're a utility token and that you're not classed as a security. And we often see a bit of backward engineering that you've got to be absolutely certain that you can be defined as a utility and get legal advice accordingly in a lot of different jurisdictions. Well, what we actually want to do is to say, look, and all of this is subject to our regulators saying, okay, you can. But we want to say to companies, look, if you are a utility token, then that's fantastic. Talk to GBX and we will take care of you and help you come to market, assuming you tick all the right boxes. But if you're a security and you look like a security, then that's okay too, because we are going to work hard. In fact, we started already on developing our own private chain for GSX, the main exchange, to be blockchain enabled. So you can become a securitized token or a tokenized security. We really are excited about going into the equity, debt and derivatives business over the next few years on the main exchange, but all on the blockchain. So it's what I came back to earlier, Barry, when we first started this interview, that we have this, I think, just really, really unique opportunity to be hopefully one of the first national exchanges, operating entirely on the blockchain. And that will be for GBX, the subsidiary, for utility tokens, and GSX, the main exchange, for tokenized securities.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the utility tokens, how do you envisage the range of that? Is that how wide in terms of what you think you'll be accepting and dealing with, both in terms of type and in terms of value?
Well, I think what we're seeing is, I think generally at a macro level, we are seeing the market, I think, reach saturation point. And I think that's probably a good thing. I think there have been unrealistic expectations from issuers with, a 3-page white paper thinking they can raise $100 million. That's just not, I don't think, going to be the case as we move forward. So I think there's a much sort of needed maturity coming to the market generally. I think you're also seeing deals shrinking in terms of size. I think going up in terms of quality. Obviously, we hope that we play a significant role in driving that through. Yeah. I think thirdly, you're seeing this type of capital raising actually becoming more acceptable to a mainstream type of issuer. And we've heard noises that, more traditional corporates are looking at this as an interesting and innovative way to tap effectively, digital crowdfunding. And I think also what we're seeing is that investors generally, as the market matures and regulations kick in and standards rise, is that you'll probably see a move to more accredited investors rather than perhaps some retail investors who today, as we said earlier, just may not understand or have the protection that they need to make sure that they are making the right decisions. So we would see in terms of growth, look, we think that we're going to certainly see, we hope, reasonable volume as we open GBX next year, and that volume will continue to grow. And given the amount of sponsors that we've had approaches from or spoken to who want to bring their clients to GBX, it's looking really, really interesting. And, I was talking to one company yesterday. They've got 30 ICOs in their inbox. Now, we're not saying that any of those are going to meet our criteria, and we're not going to say that they are of necessarily low or high quality, but it just gives you an idea of the type of interest and volume that potentially is out there if this is done correctly. And that's obviously what we want to try and do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously we're seeing a spreading type from sort of hardcore online infrastructure to more wider than that, and now on into design and things like med tech, and presumably you're going to be involved in that. Our data, by the way, sort of shows we can see over about 800 or 900 ICOs. The average has been about 20 million, and it does. You're absolutely right. Seem as if it's coming down, and that's probably a good thing. So in terms of the raise, obviously millions or tens of millions is going to be, I presume, in frame. What sort of at the lower end? What's going to be realistic, do you think?
Well, in terms of just a sort of vanilla issue size.
Yeah, just looking at the kinds of propositions that are going to be viable given the the cost base.
Yeah, to be honest, I think the interesting way the token market seems to be structured is that you've got your initial size of deal which you disclose to the market. So let's say that's 50 million, and then what tends to happen is the issuer will say, okay, we're going to do 30% now as a public sale. Yeah. So let's just say that's 15 million. We'll retain 30% as a reserve for the future to develop our plans, and say 40% will be retained for advisors to pay them out of tokens and management. So actually, it's an interesting market because you've got a 50 million ticket size, but actually only 15 million comes to market. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the type of vanilla traditional transaction which we would expect to see at GBX. A sort of 5 to 15 raise in terms of what they're looking for in the private sale and public round. And then you'll have about sort of whatever the model is, but say 20 to 40% for management and advisors. And obviously over time, those tokens will flow into the system as well as vesting clauses kick in. So, but I wouldn't be surprised. And what the reason why I think that's quite innovative is, coming from an investment banking background that I have, that you've historically, as a corporate, had to obviously fund the entire transaction out of either the proceeds or upfront. And that's obviously an expensive exercise. What the token sale process can do is it actually allows you to get quite a high portion of your issue size, let's say 15 million, actually into your account, and the rest of the fees are effectively taken up through the token itself. So I think that's actually relatively innovative, because it gives the company, in many cases, the cash it needs to get to work on hitting its benchmarks that it's laid out in its white paper.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to ask you in a moment or two about the ROC token, but before I do, as you know, I see this as a very exciting development and a continuum with crowdfunding, where in the seed form of crowdfunding or using the rewards model, you can raise very small amounts from a few thousand into hundreds of thousands or even low millions. In equity crowdfunding, from a few 100,000 into the low millions. Do you see that meeting in terms of the low end, in terms of what the blockchain exchange and the token exchange will be able to work with?
Yeah, I think that I think there's a couple of questions there. I think in terms of our own issue that we are currently in the private sale round, we as the national exchange, and obviously again we are obviously subject to a licensing regime for GBX, but our goal is that in the private and pre, we anticipate probably covering most of our deal from strategic and institutional investors or cryptocurrency investors. However, we also believe that we will have a percentage, and it probably won't be very big, of our deal size going into the public domain, and that will probably be in January. But again, I think, look, if you are an ICO issuer and you come to GBX, then we would have to ensure that any account. So the way we see it panning out is that any investors, for example, or donators, but investors in a token, would have to, if you're going through GBX, you have to have an account open at GBX as an individual or corporate account holder. So if that ends up being, for example, in the public sale, that you end up with a couple of million wallets on GBX that have all been AML and KYC cleared, then we'll be able to handle that volume. If you decide as an issuer that actually you only want 20 strategic investors of $1 million each, then that's fine too. We'll have 20 account users who open wallets and again execute the transaction that way. So it's I think it's horses for courses, depending on the type of issuer that you are and the type of owners of your token that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and in terms of the ROC token, will anyone be able to participate? And do you know what the sort of the floor level will be on that in terms of participation? And by the way, what will the utility tokens represent? What will they give a contributor? We've kind of, by the way, on the language, we tend to talk these days about backers and contributors rather than investors, so as not to confuse things in crowdfunding. I think that probably should apply to tokens as well. I don't know whether you'd agree.
Yeah, I do agree. Exactly. And that's why I said earlier donators, but I think contributors is actually is a great description. So for us right now, we are in the pre and private sale, and so we have a minimum investment of $200,000. And bonuses are available to investors in that round. For the public sale, if we do a public sale, and we probably will in January, then yes, I can't see there being any minimum cap at all in terms of what you can basically contribute to. So, but in the private sale, it's $200,000, and we have bonuses of up to 30% available, depending on the amount that you contribute.
Okay, great. And in advance of the prospective private sale, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people interested in this. Is there anywhere specifically that they should go to register their interest at present?
Again, just email me. That's the best thing to do, and then we can arrange a private meeting and discuss the proposition with you. In terms of the other part of your question on the utility, there's really a couple of answers. In the initial stage, the token will be very much there to enable you to pay for your listing fees and trading fees and sponsorship fees, etc. But it's less about technology and more about membership, governance, and access. So if you have an account open on our cryptocurrency exchange, GBX, and you own Block tokens, you will have privileges in terms of access to ICOs in the private sale round that are coming up to GBX. You will have access to order trading books. You will have the ability to vote on certain initiatives that we will be undertaking, things like the Blockchain Innovation Center, etc. And you'll also be able to get access to our entire ecosystem as we develop, during 18 and 19 into those areas that I outlined earlier. So we think that it's actually a really attractive but also unique utility token, because I don't think there's really anything out there like it today on offer.
Well, I can actually confirm that. And by the way, I'm in. And finally, what you seem to be doing here, whether deliberately or not, is providing almost a template for other places, not necessarily just jurisdictions, maybe places outside of the capital, dare I say the Northern Powerhouse, who I'm having a conversation with about this right now. But there seems to be something of a template here. What do you think are the implications and the opportunities for other jurisdictions and other places?
Yeah, I think the opportunities are absolutely enormous. We've been approached by, and we'll talk about the Northern Powerhouse in a moment, but we've been approached by a number of, let's just say, extremely large national exchanges who want to talk to us about what we're doing. I think there are partnership opportunities there to explore, and I think in terms of, particularly at home, in terms of the UK, we've already made inroads into the Northern Powerhouse and Wales. And actually Scotland as well. One of our guys on our team, Daniel, he's been spending a lot of time up in Manchester and Glasgow and Cardiff, because we also believe that regionally we can add a lot of value, because there are some amazing companies in the UK that basically just want access to capital to get stuff done. And I think since the crisis, banks are still struggling to lend, and capital markets are notoriously expensive, particularly if you want to try and go into perhaps issuing equity. And again, we just think we can hopefully help corporates, and that's what we're trying to do here, help issuers gain access to capital in, as I hate to say it, a frictionless way as possible, and also getting investors to feel that if they come to GBX, they can take comfort from the fact that there has been a process, and that process, which we again would like to think of as institutional grade in terms of transparency and disclosure of risks. You may lose all your money, but at least you knew that there was a chance that you were probably going to, because it said so in the white paper. And that's one of the things which keeps us awake at night. Businesses fail and businesses succeed, but what you have to try and do is to be able to say, look, we gave the investors everything they needed to make an informed decision. They knew the risks, and they were either smart enough or dumb enough to invest in whatever asset class they're investing in. And as an exchange, your role is to try and provide a secure and robust and regulated control environment for issuers and investors to come together, or in our place, token issuers and contributors to meet. And that's, and I think on a final note, we have genuinely seen from Kiev to Hong Kong to Lisbon, where I'm at now, and Gibraltar last week, where we were co-sponsoring a huge conference. People flew in literally from Ukraine, LA, Hong Kong to attend a conference where, a year ago, they wouldn't even know that Gibraltar existed, let alone actually, come to take part in what I think people are looking to now as, possibly a really exciting opportunity as a jurisdiction. And look, if we can play a role in that as the national exchange and contribute in some small way, then we will have done our job.
Yeah, I think one of the great innovations, particularly given, as you say, how underserved SMEs and some really great companies in the UK and elsewhere, I think, is the ability to diversify and to spread over many investments. So and I think that's a great thing. We could go on and on. I've got tons more questions, but I think we've run out of time. So Nick Cowan, thank you so much for your time today. Really exciting, and I'm looking forward to catching up with progress as you go. But thank you for now.
Barry, thanks ever so much for being a great questionnaire and being gentle with me. And let's stay in touch. And yes, look, 2018 is going to be hopefully a great year for this space, and we're really excited. But lovely to talk to you. Thanks ever so much.
Yeah, I think 2018 is going to be the year for ICOs and beyond. You've been listening to me, Barry James, on ICO Radio. If you have a question that you'd like to pose for us, or if there's someone that you think we should have on the show or interview, or indeed you yourself would like to contribute to the show, please let us know. You can email us via podcast@ICO Radio. That's ICORAD.io. You can get the address from the show notes too, and we'd love to hear from you. But beyond that, thank you so much for listening to the show, and if you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review.
ICO Radio was brought to you by author, speaker, transparency and clarity advocate, and award-winning software innovator Barry James. Get in touch with the programme, put yourself or someone else forward as a guest, visit iconewsdesk.com. And if you've enjoyed the show, please leave a review. And don't forget to subscribe to get your next insights and interviews from the ICO Radio podcast.